Hello and welcome to another episode of Pakistonomy. For the last few weeks, we've been covering a lot of geopolitics, foreign policy, what's going on in the region, etc. So I figured it was important to go back to brass tacks, so to speak, in terms of the usual topics that we talk about on this podcast, which is related to economy, finance, financial inclusion, technology, etc. So we're back to business as usual this week because joining me today is Mr. Zeeshan Rehman Khattak, who's a commissioner at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. He joined the SECP in November 2024, has over 2 decades of local and international experience in real estate investment, management, regulatory affairs, etc. And most recently, he was also associated with the Pakistan Software Export Board as Chief Commercial Officer and additionally as Chief Executive Officer designate as well. So the goal of this conversation is to talk to Mr. Khattak and get a sense of what the SECP is up to. And for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a long time, issues around financial inclusion, startup financing, etc., are the bread and butter topics of this podcast. So it's an honor for me to talk to Mr. Khattak and know what the regulator is also up to and what their strategy is. So, Zeeshan Khattak Saab, welcome to Pakistonomy and thank you for taking out the time today.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for that illustrious profile. But it's nice to be here, and it's really nice to tell people about the economic and capital market ecosystem as well.
Yeah, and I want to start with the broader perspective, right? Look, from my perspective, one of the things that Pakistan needs to solve for, and it is slowly but surely solving for, is financial inclusion. And there are all sorts of social development benefits of financial inclusion, but one in particular at the macro level is that it helps deepen a country's capital markets as well. And if you don't have deeper capital markets, then allocation of capital, investment decisions, etc., everything we talk about, manufacturing, technology, startups, etc., is just more inefficient. So help us understand how you at the SECP are approaching this particular challenge in terms of both expanding financial inclusion but also deepening capital markets in the country.
So at SECP, well, it's called a regulator, but our approach is becoming more and more so of a facilitator. We look at a business, we look at a sector of an economy or a subsector of an economy, and we see how do we make it more efficient? How do we make sure that we democratize the economy? And based on that, and how do we leverage the technology that is out there? So keeping that in mind, what we do is we look at ideas, look and we see how we can ensure that the interest of general public is protected. The requirements of FATF, AML, and all those requirements are plugged into the system. We identify risks as well, and we see कि जो भी regulatory framework we are rolling out, is it market ready and is it strong enough to deal with our economic ecosystem as well? And then we roll it out. Obviously, it's an evolving process. What happens is that whenever the regulations are being rolled out, we make sure that we go through a process of public consultation. This process has been increased more so now. तो उसमें होता ही है कि what happens is that it goes out to all the major stakeholders. We put them on our websites as well. We bring in and we encourage, and we have a whole marketing campaign on social media telling major stakeholders and general public to comment on those regulations, so that whatever that regulation or piece of law that we churn out is robust and market ready, and it actually helps. The idea is not just to keep creating regulations and circulars and all that. What we want is that the regulatory framework that is there is robust and it actually helps the general public and the economy of the country. So this is the general approach that we usually follow.
And so I've seen some of these ads, and it's been encouraging to see the SECP in many ways take the lead in some of that approach, right? Which is let people comment and let them look at and understand what the institution is trying to do. Another thing I've also sort of, in my conversations with startup founders and entrepreneurs on the technology side in Pakistan, always speak very highly of the ways in which the SECP uses or is that facilitator, as you put it, as well. But if you were to dive a bit deeper into this capital allocation topic for startups and innovators, how are you now thinking about, particularly for that stakeholder, in terms of looking at ways that they can access finance and operate, given that it's a different type of industry with very different requirements than, let's say, IPO bound companies or publicly listed companies? How do you approach this sector in particular?
So, see, with my history with IT companies and with startups as well, and being a consultant to startups in my past, so we see practical, the gating factors and hurdles, and we try to interact with these startup founders and all the even the investors and all. And we want to make sure that whatever the requirements they have and whatever we can do in terms of the regulatory enablement we do. For example, we just introduced the definition of startups in Companies Act 2020 in 2000s and all. And then we also went with reporting exemption for small companies. We introduced the employee stock options, which was available globally, but not in Pakistan. Another one is Jamboard, which is just like on a global stage. Instead of the main board, it has lesser requirements, and the companies who don't qualify for the main board are able to list on Jamboard. Another one is that we are establishing these new models through our sandbox. We were the first one who introduced regulatory sandbox. What sandbox does is that it let all these startups come in and try their ideas under controlled environment and relaxed regulatory frameworks. We as a regulator learn from that as well, and we let companies operate in regulated environment. And then whatever the learning is for the companies and for us, the regulatory framework is, it's upgraded to the learning, and the companies are more ready to go into the market and able to bring out a product which they'll be able to monetize. Another one that we do right now, for example, recently we had a startup conference. We had all these companies, the startups, the VCs come in, share their recommendations, the problems. We had conversations with them, and based on that, we came up with our report as well, which was shared. And it is not just about having these conferences and issuing reports. We then actually learn from that and we implement that as well, so that we see a progress in real world. We see that whatever we are doing is actually making an impact. So these are a few things. Another one, like I said earlier, Jamboard has a lot of interesting things. We have had, and we currently do have projects on tokenization, on gold tokenization, and various other ones that are there globally as well. Another one that we learned from Jamboard was that initially we had 4 cohorts, and now what we are doing is we have a process in place where we have refined the selection process for all the companies who wants to and the startups who wants to be part of Jamboard, and then it's an ongoing process. So now there is no cohort system. Anyone can come in, submit an application, and if they qualify, they can join the sandbox right away. Another one that is very interesting is the private funds. What we are now doing is just like globally, you have private angel funds. So we have introduced the category for angel funds, VCs, PE funds, and all that. We have sophisticated investors investing in these funds. Obviously, the risk involved is higher. This is why you have sophisticated investor. But then you allow these funds to invest in these angel companies, the startups, even the infrastructure funds are there as well. So, for example, if the central government is short on funds to invest on infrastructure projects, the revenue coming in from infrastructure projects can be channeled through those funds. So, private money can go in there, and the government is able to achieve their infrastructure objective through these funds as well. And there are multiple other categories. So, this is one which I think is going to be game changer. We have done one round of regulations which is out there. Now what we are doing is we are refining it even more. We are in talks with tax authorities as well. We just want to make sure that the product that is there is viable and is comparable to any global private funds that are out there. So it gives us an advantage. It lets our the startups and other sectors as well, and it really helps with the growth of the economy.
One thing you mentioned in sort of as you were going through this list was tokenization and gold tokenization in particular. It's tokenization is a hot word these days, even here in Washington, D.C., because the president and people around him are very pro tokenization and pro sort of digital assets and virtual digital assets as well. But in the context of gold, we've seen obviously a monstrous rally in gold prices over the last few months, which has led to even more interest in the asset class around the world. And Pakistanis love gold in any case. But even in markets like India, we've seen the emergence of digital gold holdings, right? To formalize the gold trade in a way that people are लोगों ने अपनी बिस्तर के नीचे गोल्ड सोना नहीं रखा हुआ है formally invest अगर if they do it it's good for capital markets too and there's a lot of that holding out there in the country. Tell us a bit about this idea in particular, because I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I've talked about digital gold holdings in the past as well, and would love to hear what the SECP is thinking on it, because I think it could be a game changer if we get it right, because the formalization of capital from informal gold holdings to formal gold holdings is very important for Pakistan.
So that's a good question, and right, there is a lot of interest from the market as well. So there are certain ideas and certain products, financial products, where not one but multiple regulators are involved. As far as SECP is concerned, obviously it is a lot of push and we are all in. We are with in talks and in all those committees with the federal government as well to make sure that new things happen in the market. The thing with regulations is that they are always behind innovation, and the difference between developed capital markets and not so developed capital market is that lag and the time difference between the regulatory framework and actual innovation is shorter in more developed markets. What we are trying to do is to make sure that we are able to achieve this the certain level where the interests of general public are protected. We are in constant talks with the central government as well. We are going in a direction. As far as if specific timelines are concerned, we are exploring ways that how we can do it quicker. PWARA is recently mandated to come up with all these new projects, including Bitcoin and virtual assets as well. We are very closely working with PWARA along with the other regulators, and we want to make sure that the regulatory framework that they are going to issue, we have our comments and our recommendations with them so that the product they come up with is viable. So we are there, and we are trying to make sure that we can bring a product out as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, it would be very exciting, particularly, if the regulatory framework gets this part right, because I think again,
Mhm.
digitization or formalization of gold holdings can be a very big impact, can have a very big impact on overall savings in Pakistan as well. Tell us a bit about sort of like the roadmap for regulatory sandboxes. You mentioned that the cohort-based approach is no longer, for at least GEM is not there. But in regulatory sandboxes, I've heard about fintech regulatory sandboxes in the past as well. What are you looking to do moving forward in terms of, again, because correct me if my understanding of this is wrong, but part of the reason regulatory sandboxes are also neat, right, is because to your point of trying to shorten that lag between regulation and innovation, they allow everybody to learn very quickly. So, what are you looking to do next in terms of the concept of regulatory sandboxes, and what are some of the learnings that have come out so far?
Actually, you have just nailed it. In SCCP, we view innovation as a delivery mechanism for inclusion, efficiency, and consumer choice. So our regulatory sandbox was created to provide fintechs and innovators a controlled environment in which to pilot live solutions under bespoke regulatory supervision. So like I said earlier, capital markets and these kind of products are able to bring financial inclusion to every nook and cranny of the country. It obviously it's all helped through our the advancements in technology as well, and we have this ability to get women inclusion into the financial ecosystem, and then we believe that having these systems in place would allow people in GB Balochistan to take advantage of all the economic benefits that can be gathered from all this. So regulatory sandbox is there, like I said earlier. We have a system in place. We are evolving it. We have already evolved it. What happens is that all these fintechs, when they come in, if they have a good idea, we let them come in, pitch their idea. There's a process, and then they have to fill up some paperwork, not much really, and then we see how it goes, and it's a two-way street. So the startup would have certain learnings, and they'll face hurdles which they share with us, and we would actually now see where there's a regulatory blackout, or where are there hindrances, regulatory hindrances that needs to be taken out to make the product more robust. Also, we are not working in a closed system. What we are doing right now in Pakistan would have impact on a global scale as well because of the flow of funds and all that. So while going with the regulatory sandbox, we want to make sure that the product, like I said earlier, is market ready. What we have achieved so far is concrete and quite measurable. Since launching the first cohort in 2019, the sandbox has run four cohorts, like I said earlier, and it includes the Takaful, robo advisory, digital only distribution to parametric Takaful, and broker and asset management, and early experiments in asset management and brokerage has really helped us launch these digital only brokerage as well as digital only MC licenses and the systems in place. So these were all experiences, and we were able to introduce new products in the market as well.
Yeah, no, I mean that part has been always been very exciting, and I think the fact that you started working on it in 2019, right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic turbocharged access to fintech and people's
Yeah.
understanding of that, right, I think was very good timing in the sense that there was early movement on that. Looking forward, we're in September 2025. Let's say over the next year or so, what are some priorities for you and your team? What are you looking to achieve? And what, as the SECP, the facilitator of all of this, excites you most as a commissioner in terms of what's coming next from the institution?
So when it comes to SECP, what we have is what we call SMART, which is we have specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound objectives. So what we do is we set out these objectives for all the workforce. We have a plan. We make sure that there's promotion of digitization, enhancing user experience, growth and outcome in regulated sectors. We have market development and enforcement. And finally, we are improving transparency and governances. We make sure that all our workforce and our policies are geared towards that. So when it comes to digitization, we make sure that there is no confusion about digitally enabled or digitized companies. What it means is that you cannot just have certain processes which are digitally enabled rather than having a whole company which is digitized and is ready for the new world. For example, in SCCP as well, we have a LEAP program which is ensuring that all the licenses are done through the computer and logging in and through portals rather than having physical papers being submitted. So it's all paperless. We have various modules that are being added, and hopefully we will be able to conclude that project before the end of 2026. So what that means is that a lot of these we have recently launched Easy File, and I think 3,000 companies are being registered and monthly on that. So that is one. So rather than having, and interestingly, we can have a company registered in just 4 hours. So that creates a very interesting,
Wait, let me interrupt you there. You said an entity in Pakistan can register with the SECP in 4 hours.
Yes.
Because
So
people typically think 4 महीने लग जाते हैं ऐसे कामों
नहीं,
में.
सो
Like
अ लॉट ऑफ
amazing.
टाइम्स, या सो अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स जहाँ पे अगर थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता भी है, वो यही होता है कि इफ दे हैव लैक ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन और समथिंग वेयर द दे हैव टू सबमिट दैट इंफॉर्मेशन, rather than that the system, and it does most of the time on average, it takes 4 hours to register a company. Another one interesting is the digital AMCs, for example. We were able to do digital broker, digital AMCs. So we were moving away from the brick and mortar. And with that, with associated cost reduction, the companies are able to pitch their products and services to people in far off places. So giving them the opportunity to be the part of the capital market system and take advantage of it. See, the idea of financial markets and capital markets is not to have all these benefits, the economic benefits, just directed towards a certain segment or a certain area of the economy. The idea is to distribute that across the whole country, because we want to make sure that the life is better. There's betterment for economic opportunities and income for the entire country. When we ask about my approach is very simple. My approach is that when a person comes in and when a company comes in to start a business in the country, we want to make sure that that business is given full opportunity to establish itself. Regulations are there to make sure that the interests of general public are protected, and then there are no nullified intent anywhere. Other than that, SECP as a regulator is a facilitator to ensure that businesses grow, because these same businesses create jobs and it helps with the growth of the economy. So the idea is not to be the one, looking at business and see what can go wrong. The idea is to look at companies and businesses and see what can go right and how to make it better. With today's world, I think a lot of these companies should have a very global perspective. I think when they grow, particularly when it comes to startups, the idea is that you run a company within your local environment, and when you are able, you should list and then you should venture abroad as well. See, a lot of these companies, and we see from the global experience as well, a lot of these companies has an expected life cycle. The expected life cycle is that a startup, I'm so sorry, I'm going back to that point, but I have to say this. In startups, when they come in, they have a certain amount, a certain life cycle that they look at. They're thinking, you know what, we'll have a startup, we'll graduate to a small company stage, then we'll get some kind of traction from the market. We will list at 7 or 10 years. We'll retain certain control of the company, retain any control in the company, and start another venture. And this is a whole cycle that happens. We see all these global companies, for example, if you look at today's Google, Facebook, and all, they all went through the same life cycle. The idea is to start the same fire in our country. The idea is to have a system in place where all these startups have this ability and this vision, by the way. We cannot have a startup which is going to stay startup for another 2, 3, 4 years. It has to monetize. We have to find the answers quickly. We have to know whether we will be able to succeed or fail. If we are going to succeed, we go with the same program. If not, we do something else. But the cycle has to keep going. People say about stock market that you know what, the company goes bust and then all that. You see, idea with stock market in global learning is also not that every company is going to be successful. You are a shareholder in a company. The company can go down, or they can make money as well. We have to make sure that the objective is intact of the company, and it is going in a direction which has been shared with the shareholders. Most of the company are expected, if when they reach at a listing stage, is expected that they have a good business model, and they are able to succeed. But there will be some, very few, but there will be some who would fail as well, which happens globally as well. And the idea is just to create a very good regulatory environment for them to operate and to give them a good and an equal opportunity to compete, and create a level playing field.
No, I couldn't agree more, right? I think in emerging markets like Pakistan, at the general public level, there is this misunderstanding that, bankruptcy is bad or going out of business is terrible and you've been scammed, or that's only the only way that you go out of business. But that's part of the creative destruction in any economy, right? as you said. And also the learnings from that should keep coming back into the ecosystem. And many startups don't go anywhere, but the learnings from that allow the founders or the employees of that early stage startup to go another place and succeed there. And then the wealth creation effect, as you said, kicks in, which is you graduate from pre-seed to series A, B, C, you go pre-IPO, then you IPO, everyone makes some money, and that money then goes into some new funds that are on the angel side. Some may go it into the asset management company side, and that's the creative destruction that the economy has to have. So I'm glad the SECP is also thinking about channeling some of those animal spirits
And we are
into the.
not, and honestly, we are not even compromising when it comes to the governance and transparency. We are making sure that the governance system is in place. For example, the recent example will be notification of MOFAP, which is Mutual Fund Association of Pakistan, as SRO. So it's now a self-regulatory organization, which we learned from global experience. We were gearing up for it for the last 10 years. We wanted to make sure that they are capable of doing what they're expected to do. But then we were able to tell them, you know what, now you go ahead and look at the asset management companies. We will still be the apex regulator, but we would want a body which is able to take some of our job and try to implement that. And if then there is some, there are issues that needs to be resolved, we are always available. So SCCP, when it comes to the transparency and governance, we are constantly learning. Like I said, we are a member of IOSCO as well. We learn from global experience. And then we have those systems in place when it comes to governance and transparency. And then we look at ESG, for example. We are very much aligned with that as well. And we are supporting that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that businesses are able to operate effectively.
Last question from me on this, which is, we had another summer and monsoon season of floods. Pakistan, as we all know by now, is a frontline state when it comes to climate risks and climate change and climate extreme weather events, etc. And part of the global conversation on this also is how do you mobilize climate financing, not just to rebuild, but to rebuild resilient infrastructure and build it in the right way such that the planning already is there for these extreme weather events, etc. How is the SECP thinking about that kind of climate financing for infrastructure and for other things, both for large projects that have central government or provincial government backing, but also on the private side when it comes to looking at power plants, housing societies, things like that? Like, what is the approach in the overall climate financing space from the SECP?
That's a very nice question. See, if in case of Pakistan, we are the top 10 countries being hit with climate change, and we see a frequency of the floods and all these catastrophes that we are being confronted with. So what we have now is that we encourage companies to have these climate change and climate friendly policies, products embedded in their financial modeling as well. A good example of that would be us, issuing ESG module, and then we had ESG portal. So what ESG stands for is that it contains environmental, social, and governance friendly and supportive practices. So for that, we have been in constant liaison with all the other stakeholders as well, and with financial entities and companies, because we believe that helping this agenda cannot happen on by CCP's push only. We need all the stakeholders aligned to ensure that we get that objective done. A classic example would be the issuance of green sukuks. We were able to do that, and that was something for the first time that happened in Pakistan. And in fact, I was in a meeting yesterday as well, and there is another launch as well for a green environmental friendly sukuk as well. We are encouraging insurance companies to issue crop insurance, again, which deals with the environmental agenda. Another one is that lending NBFCs, we encourage them to issue products and services which would help general public and the people from rural areas to have that kind of shock insurance, or to deal with the environmental shocks that they are being confronted with. Another one is that in capital markets too, we are encouraging companies to disclose all their environmental friendly policies and the systems on their websites and on PSX as well, so that when the global investors, they are investing in Pakistan, their money goes through the environment, goes actually directed to the environmentally friendly companies as well. With that happening, obviously company would have to comply to ensure that they're able to attract that kind of investment. On the investment side, we are encouraging companies to invest in environmentally friendly and environmentally supportive companies. So right now, obviously, it's more on voluntary basis, but as we go, the plan is to make this more mandatory so that the companies are able to incorporate these products and these principles into their financial models, and which will eventually help the economy as well. And it happens globally as well. In fact, we see now in the US, I think so. Our philosophy is that climate change exists, and it's a reality, and there is no con. And we believe that we have to support the climate change, the projects which will help tackle the climate change, because we have seen the reality, and we are there, and we have to be prepared.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling because I remember a few months ago I was having a conversation with somebody in Washington, and they were asking me, "Well, what's the politics of climate change in Pakistan?" And I was like, "Politics of I just did not initially didn't put two and two together, and then I realized they were approaching it from the American lens about the politics of climate change, and I was like, there is no politics of climate change in Pakistan. Everybody from the villager whose village got flooded in 2022, to elite sitting in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, and Karachi and Lahore agree that this is real, this is dangerous, this is destroying the country, and we need to do something about it, right? So it's one of those things have to now remind my American friends that there is no politics around climate change in Pakistan, because it is real, and it is a visible part of life
We,
in the
we are
country.
living it, right? And we
Exactly.
also trying to see that that's exactly the thing. And we have to, and we are leveraging technology side as well, because I believe that in our new reality, and there are two realities now. One is the climate change, the other one is technology. So why not, address one reality with another one? So I do believe, and I do personally believe as well, that technology is going to be our key to address the climate change as well. May it be solar, hydro, smart finance, smart machines, and smart generators. But I think that is the only way forward.
No, even I fully agree. And even for something like crop insurance, right? Like if you take a look at now new technology, you could have satellite imagery of farms to get a sense of their output and yield, provide that insurance. And if a disaster happens, that same satellite imagery can be used to determine the scale of loss,
Yeah,
and automate the payout through the fintechs that you have in your sandbox, for
yeah,
example, right? Because
yeah.
the ID system is there. So it is possible with that,
But
right?
topographic maps are there, the weather maps are there. You can have those layers on it as well, and you can actually insure based on that.
Correct.
You can actually have probability models, and then send out insurance companies according to those models as well. So yeah, it can happen.
It
And
is
also, you
true.
see, we leveraging the technology. Another interesting one is to think about having AI for enforcement as well. If there's a company which wants to send out an advertisement, you want an AI model to look at the advertisement based on the regulatory framework in that country and tell them that this is probably going to work and this won't work, so you might want to amend it. If technology leveraged properly can make everyone's life easy. Obviously, we cannot fully, at the end of the day, there is going to be a human being involved, for right now at least. But I do believe that leveraging technology would help with climate change and for the regulatory side of things as well.
Yeah, 100%. And since we're brainstorming, I think another way to deploy large language models, right, is to currently I've seen like mainly financial inclusion education or how to detect frauds or scammers, etc., is Urdu or English. but LLMs
Yeah.
allow you to convert it into Dari, in Pashto, in Balochi, in Saraiki, in Punjabi, whatever linguistic sort of traditions exist in Pakistan. It's now very easy to translate everything and make it sound in the same dialect and the accent the people are familiar with, and they all have phones now. So that's how the education
Yeah,
can
yeah.
happen, and all of a sudden that big sort of lift of translating that content now can be automated end to end, basically.
Yeah, and you mentioned phones. See, with phones and with number of subscribers, see, that is also a very unique opportunity. And in Pakistan, it's filled with opportunities. Imagine companies being able to pitch products, insurance products, and maybe investment products through these companies which have around 80, 90 million subscribers. And then they have access to so many families, so many local markets and rural area. Imagine the kind of impact and the financial inclusion these companies can make. So for us
100%.
being a regulator, we want that regulatory framework is available, and we would tell them that, you know what, this is a good opportunity, and we would actually help them do that, because that helps us achieve our ultimate goal, which is for women inclusion, for financial inclusion, for, like I said earlier, for the economy to reach every house of the country and all. So it really helps us get our objectives.
No, I fully agree, and this has been a wonderful conversation, and I learned a lot from the work that you and your team at the SCCP is doing. And my takeaway is that the ethos is to be a facilitator, and I endorse that view. So thank you for taking out the time and explaining this, and for the wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much for having me, and we really appreciate the work that you do. And through this, we are able to tell people what what SCCP does and whatever we can do for them. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
this.